Oh boy. Third video. Know your ally, Britain. Let me tell you something. If black and white videos get your penises hard, men and women, because I know that nowadays women also have cocks. So if it gets you, in the mood, you're going to love this video. So go ahead and strip naked. Let's get into it.
Freedom isn't a thing that can be imposed from without. It can only be created from within.
The Indians have a responsibility to reconcile the differences that exist in the vast Indian population with its 100 different languages, its dozens of different religions. And on March the 11th, 1942, the British government placed itself on record and promised full self-government to India if India will work out a constitution that will satisfy its people after the war is over. But during this war, military leaders agree Allied troops are needed in India as an effective bloc by the democratic world to keep the Nazis and Japs from uniting. Further, India provides the bases for United Nations bombers to get at the Japs in Burma. In other parts of the empire, too, democracy stands on guard. If it wasn't for the British at Gibraltar, Malta, Cyprus, Suez, Alexandria, and they're hanging on to them regardless of the cost, and their drive across Libya to Tripoli, there would have been no American landing in North Africa.
There's another tune the Nazis play about the British Empire.
The British are sitting back, letting others fight the war for them.
Ooh, we know that tune very well. Britain will fight to the last Australian or Canadian or New Zealander. The truth that thousands of Canadians and Australians and New Zealanders have gallantly fought and gallantly died in Crete, in Greece, in Libya.
And I don't know if that German guy knows this, but those countries are fighting against the Nazis because of the leader that the Nazis have and the plan and just the whole Nazi thing. So they're signing up on their own to fight and possibly die on their own free choice. So it's not really England that's dragging them into it. It's actually the Nazis that are dragging these people into war.
There's something the Nazi mouthpiece leaves out, something pretty important. Out of every 10 inhabitants of the British Empire, 1 comes from Britain. But of the casualties suffered so far in this war, 7 out of 10 were born and raised in Britain. 1 of 10 in population, 7 of 10 in casualties.
Wow.
And in the air, of the planes flying with the RAF in Britain, 2 out of 3 are manned by crews from the island. And of the planes on the overseas fronts, the Western Desert in Africa and the rest, 4 out of 5 are manned by boys from Britain. And then there's a little thing called the British Navy. From 1588, when it licked the Spanish Armada, to 1940, when we got moving on a 2-ocean navy, the greatest battle fleet in the world. That, too, is manned almost entirely by men of Britain, the little island in the Atlantic, an island of seafarers. And the British Merchant Navy, still the greatest merchant navy in the world, in spite of all that Hitler can do. Men from every British town and village in the stokeholds of 10,000 ships, on ice-coated decks, in grimy engine rooms, men who have been torpedoed twice, 3 times. There's one English sailor who's been torpedoed 6 times and still signed on again.
But we never hear about these things because of a curious character whose ways will never be completely understandable to an American. John Britton himself. He has an idea he shouldn't talk about himself and what he does. He calls it bad form. We call it damn silly. He'd say of a Spitfire, "Oh, she's not bad, little kite." But this man, the boss of the German Air Force, can tell us that the Spitfire has been the most deadly fighter in the world. And we certainly need an interpreter when this happens.
Hello, Bob. Had a good trip?
Oh, all right.
All right, except that he spent 2 days in the icy waters of the North Atlantic after being torpedoed on the way to Murmansk. See this man?
That's just a weekend, right?
His name is Whitten Brown. And this man, believe it or not, is the first man who flew the Atlantic non-stop. In 1919, 8 years before anyone else, he and John Alcock flew non-stop from Newfoundland to Ireland. But as usual, the British let it go at that, and Whitten Brown went back into obscurity. There's nothing wrong with John Britton that a correspondence course in showmanship wouldn't cure.
For a moment, imagine that you're not American, but British.
Okay.
You'd still be in uniform. For in Britain, every man between the age of 18 and 41, unless he cannot be replaced at a vital workbench, is already in uniform. Your old man, too. He's had to quit gassing about the last war, for they're now starting to draft men up to 51. Dependents or no dependents. If you've got yourself into this mess, your draft board will say, "Frightfully sorry, old chap, but you're in the Army anyway." And your kid sister, if she isn't a sailor, or in the Air Force, or the Land Army, or a ferry pilot, or in the fire brigade, she's probably in the Army, for they've drafted unmarried women up to 30. And even if she's married, every woman up to 41 can be drafted to work in war plants. And it's a real draft, for 8 million workers, men and women, can't quit their jobs or be fired without government permission. Britain is only 20 miles from German guns and German planes. Everybody, man or woman, young or old, is in the front line.
Maybe this isn't your idea of Britain. The ads were different, and you wondered whether they still made bows and arrows at the village forge.
What?
The ads kept quiet about industry, just as this one leaves out the aircraft plants and the oil fields. Well, they have the rich green fields you've read about, the quiet country lanes, but they also have the steel mills of Sheffield, the Pittsburgh of Britain. They have the picturesque little villages, the gently flowing streams, the lovely old castles. But they also have the shipyards of the River Clyde, not as modern as Henry Kaiser's, but still one of the greatest in the world. They have the old cathedrals, deathless reminders of a rich tradition. But they also have the great industrial cities of Birmingham, Glasgow, Manchester, Leeds. They seldom, if ever, saw an American tourist, but they made Britain, even in peacetime, one of the greatest industrial powers in the world. And in wartime, even as late as July 1942, this little island, no larger than the state of Idaho, was making more war goods than we were. Maybe you thought John Britton sat there and waited for us to send him planes and guns and tanks. Well, he's deeply grateful for what our Lend-Lease did for him. It saved his skin when he was in a tough spot. But today, Lend-Lease works in more ways than one. For today, John Britton himself furnishes planes and guns and tanks through the same Lend-Lease to us, to Russia, and his other allies all over the world. In Britain alone, our forces have received, free from the British, 1.5 million tons of food, clothing, and munitions, and 2.5 million tons of other materials. There's another thing you ought to know about Britain. If your unit gets sent there, you probably won't be invited out for supper or for a drink. That's not because the British don't want to entertain you. They haven't anything to entertain you with. Britain is mobilized for war, total war, and that means an end to civilian supplies. If you were a Britisher, you wouldn't expect your girl to use lipstick. There isn't any, except what we bring over as bait. She wouldn't be smartly dressed, for clothes are rationed, severely rationed. It's very unlikely she wears stockings, for if she bought a pair of stockings a month, that would be all the clothes of any kind she could buy. That's some rationing. We think our gas rationing is tough, but John Britton gets no gas at all. He goes to a pub to buy a bottle of whiskey. The pub keeper laughs in his face. Grain is needed for industrial alcohol. Industrial alcohol is needed for munitions. And nearly all the reserve stock of British whiskey is kept for sale to America to pay for the goods Britain buys here. For don't forget, besides Lend-Lease, Britain buys and pays for vast quantities of goods. And it was the cash purchases that Britain made before we entered the war that gave our munitions industry its start and enabled us to build it up in record time. He goes to buy a pack of cigarettes. There probably aren't any. But if there are,
2 shillings, please.
that's 40 cents for a pack of cigarettes. 12 cents represent the cost of the cigarettes. The other 28, the tax paid to the government. For Britain...
I know a lot of people that would love to pay 40 cents for a pack of cigarettes when you're paying $10 for a pack now.
is going all out in taxation.
49
Nobody
million.
is making any money out of this war. Industry is paying. Excess profits tax is 100%. Labor is paying. The man who earns $33 a week pays 29% income tax. And the rich man, if there are any of them left, pays an income tax of no less than 97.5%.
Holy shit.
And then there's the little matter of food. There are not many fat men in England nowadays. But John Britton isn't kicking. He knows 1 egg a week is helping him to win the war. The British rations are the rations of a free people. They could get food as they did in peacetime from Canada, Australia. But that would take ships. And the British prefer to use the ships for supplies to Russia.
What the hell were they eating? 1 egg a week? Okay. What about the rest of the week? Were they eating grass? Tree bark? Swallowing big mouthfuls of air? Holy shit. Can we just, by the way, can I just say again, holy shit, tax rate 97.5%? You're walking away with 2.5, I'll say dollars, but 2.5 pounds per 100? Wow. But I mean, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, why were they doing that? I understand why they were doing it. They had to pay for the goods and stuff like that. It was war. But oh my goodness. And then again, you have to look at it like you're suffering, everyone's suffering. What are you going to do? Bitch to somebody who's... Everyone's suffering. And you know that this war is going to go on forever. So, if you're looking at it from World War I standpoint, and you're Britain, you're probably thinking, okay, look, this is year 2 of the war. The first one was 4 years. So, you know, maybe another 2 years of this. Revolutionary War was 76 to 83, but really the fighting stopped after, was it 81? That's 5-ish years. Still, don't get me wrong, that's a hell of a long time, especially in war, because time's going to feel like it slows down. The Ukraine war feels like we've heard about it for a long time. It hasn't even been a year yet. So, I have more respect for them now because of the shit they went through. Britain. John Britton, hell of a guy.
from America, troops to the Mediterranean. To win the war, every Britisher is on short rations and has been on short rations for 2 years. Everybody except the children. They get 4 times the eggs that grown-ups do. They get all the oranges that arrive in Britain, and practically all of the extra milk.
I tell you right now, I know I could beat the shit out of those kids and get some more food. Is that a terrible thing to say?
For John, Britain is thinking of after the war, of the new world that his children and ours will inherit. A world where there will not only be freedom of speech and freedom of worship,
No
but
wars.
also freedom from want and freedom from fear.
It is not given to us to peer into the mysteries of the future. Still I avow my hope and faith, sure and inviolate, that in the days to come, the British and American peoples will, for their own safety and for the good of all, work together in majesty, in justice, and in peace.
This is what the British are fighting for. They are an old people, a stubborn people, and sometimes they have moved slowly. But in 3 years of blood and sweat and tears, John Britain has found his soul. Now he is tough. Now he is determined, and now he knows where he is marching, to victory and to a new world. He's a good man to have on our team.
Who gave that man an apple? Where'd he get that apple? Son of a bitchin' thief. Oh, listen. So, who won World War II? Was it the Nazis? I don't remember. That was good. Yeah, look, this isn't a shocker. You suffer a lot in war. And suffered more back then because things weren't as plentiful as they are today. And by the way, something about Winston Churchill. Every time I hear him talk, I just sit there and listen. He's just, I don't know what it is about him. I'm sure other people probably understand what I'm trying to say. It's just listening to him talk. He was a brilliant, I don't want to say talker, but he was just a brilliant. The way he spoke, it conveyed a passion and a strength and just this determination that it was when he said, "We won't give up." You could sit there and go, "By God, they're not going to." I mean, Churchill just said they're not going to give up. It was kind of like if he said, "Hey, look, we'll surrender." Other people would have been like, "All right." But if he said, "We'll fight to the last man," people were like, "All right, well, that's what we're doing. We're doing it now." Like he just had a way. Maybe it was like a charisma where when he spoke, you listened and it meant something. Even today, like I have a thing on speeches. And it's a recording, and there are a few, it's like greatest speeches in history, and there's the booklet that has the text, and then there's a DVD that goes with it, and I can listen to some of his, I think he has like, I don't know, a couple speeches on there at least, and I can just sit there and listen to him. It's his voice, it's the way he speaks, it's the passion in his words. He's really good. I would have loved to have heard someone like Abraham Lincoln at the same time with some of the things he said. And other people, I think, Just Lincoln was on there as well. But you know. But this isn't about Lincoln. It's not exactly about Churchill. It's about John Britton. So, this is good. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad no one requested it. I'm doing this all by myself. No one said anything to me. So, I'm going to end this here. Oh yeah, you can put your dicks away because the video's over. So, we're just going to like and subscribe. And we're going to go ahead and end this shame video. Because if you had the cock out, then pretty weird now, isn't it? Got to put it away. I'm shaming you for it. You guys made this weird, so I'm just gonna end the video now.